Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Quiet, numbskulls. I'm broadcasting.
Can we get serious now?
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
Tuned into another edition of the business side of music today in the studio. We're going to say at least cross town here in Nashville, Tennessee. We're playing the COVID Let's Be Safe game here that we all seem to be doing recently. Michael Sloan, who is the CEO of Streaming Promotions, is with us. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Streaming Promotions, you're a strategic platform promotions company, and you specialize in Spotify playlisting. Obviously, there's a lot of things going on these days. I want to talk about this a little bit. Spotify's CEO, Daniel Ek, came up a few days ago in the news talking about independent artists and what they need to do. But your company, you help the artists to grow their audience. You create campaigns for them. Is that correct? Tell me a little bit about the company.
I started about 5.5 years ago. Obviously, Spotify and all the consumption services really were becoming much more prevalent and important to the music community as a whole. At the time, I was working at Big Machine Label Group and departed to start Streaming Promotions with the thought that, all artists aren't going to get, editorial support from Spotify. So the editorial staff obviously put together most of the playlists you see on the front page of Spotify. Today's top hits, New Music Friday, those types of things. Most of those, 90 to 95% major label artists on those playlists. But if you believe Daniel Ek, 40,000 songs are added to the platform daily. So there's a ton of content being added, some of that being independent music, of course. And if you're not going to get support from Spotify from an editorial standpoint, then you've got to grow audience somewhere. So the goal of Streaming Promotions was to help both the independent artists and some majors. I mean, we work with some majors as well, but really just help grow audience and grow fan base on Spotify, which I feel like is the easiest way to get adoption and grow your fan base through discovery on a platform that pretty much holds all the music and recorded history. So it's a great way to grow a fan base. So we went about trying to build out relationships with independent or user-generated curators. So just users like you or myself that has a profile on Spotify and created a playlist. Just like with every other social media platform, some people decide that would be a great way to gain followers for them. So those playlists have followers. And we go and find those people and start a conversation and ask if we can pitch the music. And again, just try to go about growing audience within that user-generated community. Hopefully then triggering the algorithmic playlist to Spotify, Discover Weekly, Release Radar, Daily Moods, the radio functionality, and exploiting those algorithms and help them grow from there.
First of all, a lot of big words with a lot of syllables. This is a huge process. This is a lot more than just, say, getting your music on SoundCloud or Pandora. There's a lot of moving components. And I want to back up a little bit to something you said. The editorial process of getting your music on there. Now, obviously, it's easier for, say, John Mayer or Zach Brown or Kanye West, someone like that, than it is for the independent artist. I would think simply because they bring a larger audience to the table and their name being familiar. Is this editorial process that you're talking about, is it skewed more to represent the major artist than it is the independent artist?
I mean, definitely. There's, Spotify has staff that is, they're directly supporting, the labels and independent labels as well and distribution companies. So, I know for a fact there are staff at Spotify that support the major labels in town and elsewhere. But those staff members are there to sit with whomever at those labels is running streaming. And sometimes those are salespeople, but most labels now have someone that's specifically in charge of streaming. And they sit down and say, what are your monthly, weekly, quarterly priorities? What are you going to be releasing and how do we help support that? What programs can we bring to you The independent artist is not going to have the luxury of a dedicated person at Spotify. What they're going to do is go through the Spotify artist portal and submit music for submission to the editorial team. And again, there's 40,000 tracks released every day. So you're casting a pretty, it's a wide net to try to get out to those editorial people. And I just wonder how that editorial staff is able to actually hear, 40,000 tracks released daily. You're in a much better spot if you're a label and you've got a dedicated person to say, these are my priority tracks.
So 2 questions. First of all, the number 40,000 tracks that Spotify says is being out there every day, is that a number that they're representing, or is there data to back that up? And then I guess the second part of my question is, what you've described that they do for the major labels, is that where your company comes in and helps the independent artist?
So first question, I know TuneCore released that 40,000 number, and I've seen a quote from Daniel Ek with Spotify that corroborated it. So I'm assuming, yes, that is somewhere close to correct. I heard that figure probably a year and a half ago, so it could be, I'm sure it varies. As far as where we come in, our efforts are never going to be for that editorial staff. So we're going to go to the actual fans, the actual users of Spotify, those with large enough communities to help grow audience. That's going to be our effort. We're going to do as wide a swath as possible to help get ads on those playlists. Those playlists all have followers. We're hoping those followers become fans of the artist. And the long tail there is we hope they buy tickets and buy merchandise and become fans of the artist, and there's long-term growth there.
If we look at that 40,000 number and put that on the calculator, span that over a year's time, you're looking at over 14 million releases out there, and that's a lot of noise. How do you get above that fray to get even a glimmer of someone to look at your music? Now, I'm going to back up for a second and say I spent a lot of time on YouTube looking for that very unique, maybe unheard of, at least here in the States, artist that then once I find a song or a music video that I like, I expand upon that. Is that the same process that you're talking about here, or is it something entirely different? How do you get above that 14,600,000 odd number of basically white noise that's out there and really get a spotlight put on the artists that you're working with?
Sure. I think that's the $1 million question. What our efforts specific to Spotify is to find communities, in this sense, I'm using communities as a playlist where people are gathering and listening to music of a certain genre or certain mood, a certain vibe. And we're trying to say, hey, we have this artist that we think would fit well within this playlist. We know you already have a community here. And without doing any type of payola or pay for placement or anything nefarious, our goal is to get a song added to that list and grow audience there. Because otherwise, any independent artist is just, you're doing what we call the figure eight. You're releasing music to the same community, going back, building more music, releasing music to the same community. And if there's no growth beyond that, it's great if you've got 100,000 people that are going to spend $1,000 a year on you. But, the reality is most artists don't have that. Most artists are trying to release to a pretty small community. So it's all about growth.
You stated something, first of all, none of these are botted streams. None of this is pay for play. You don't own any of the lists. And the other thing is your process, from what I've read, is, I don't want to say it's non-automated, but it's very hands-on. It is based on relationships and you people working in the trenches with the artists and helping that audience grow.
Absolutely. There's nothing that we're doing that the artist couldn't do themselves. We've just got 5 years of research and built it. There's nothing glamorous about what my staff is doing. It's grunt work. It's a lot of internet sleuthing and reverse engineering usernames and trying to match up profile pictures and start a conversation. We're not doing it the easy way for sure. But I also, if I was going to get into the promotion game, which I never really had the intention of doing, I was going to do it as ethically as possible and follow Spotify's terms and conditions and read the end user license agreement and understand that, what I could and couldn't do. And so we've gone about it as ethically as possible. But there's a lot of folks out there that are doing a lot of botted streams and doing a lot of purchase of playlists and adding them to lists they own. And that's just, I don't know that you're getting much bang for your buck out of that either.
Yeah, and that's obviously a conversation we've had on the show when it comes to terrestrial radio promotions in that, and this is a bone of contention for me. I'll see someone on Facebook, an artist, they'll post a song. Hey, my song is number so-and-so. Maybe it's number 1 for that week, or it's in the top 10 on some playlist. And I look at that playlist and I go, never heard of it. I don't think it means any kind of an impact. It's not a representation of a widespread cross-section of the music planet. This is where Spotify really is a different animal, because it is becoming the norm, right? Spotify streaming promotions plays a vital part in that. Well,
sure. I mean, you're going to have to, obviously, if you're releasing music these days, it's going to go beyond just the physical product or digital download. You're going to have to, have a relationship with these consumption DSPs, right? So Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, you're going to have to release your music there because that's where the current audience is. And I think the difficult part there is everyone else is releasing music there too. And unfortunately, there's no barrier to entry. So, I mean, I can go make armpit noises in the bathroom and have it on Spotify next Friday. It doesn't make it music, but I'm not going to let you call my baby ugly. It's like I can get it out there, but that's not necessarily, maybe I shouldn't be. I mean, I think we all used to complain about A&R and how, it was so difficult to get in to be able to have music released. And now it's really easy. And maybe we're missing that. Someone telling you, maybe you shouldn't release that. Maybe that's not good enough. And I think that's something that it's a struggle that I have, I guess. When we probably get 250 submissions a month at Streaming Promotions through our contact form, we take 5 to 7 of those, maybe monthly. There's just not an audience for everything. And sometimes we don't have the relationships to help, but most of the time we're pretty broad in the genre and vibe and feel and mood. We've got playlists for everything, but there's music that's just not good enough.
No, I agree. And we're going to talk about this a little more when we come back. In the meantime, we're get a word in for one of our sponsors. And then when we come back, we're going to have some more conversation with Michael Sloan, who is the CEO of Streaming Promotions.
Hey everyone, this is Jack Sharkey. I'm the Marketing and Technical Communications Manager at KEF, and you're listening to The Business Side of Music.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Hi everyone, I'm Larry Butler, and I want to send you a free digital copy of my new book, The Singer-Songwriter Rulebook, 101 Ways to Help You Improve Your Chances of Success. That's right. Everything you need to know to launch your career as a singer-songwriter, all based on my 40 years in the live performance arena, and believe me, I've seen it all. In my book, you'll find the 10 things you have to deal with before even thinking about becoming a singer-songwriter performer. You'll also learn about the 5 things every singer-songwriter can do this weekend to make their live show better. 5 things I can guarantee that you are not doing already. Plus, there's tips on songwriting and staging, photo and video shoots, publishing, merch, dozens of other topics. All written for people who don't particularly like to read. And again, it's free. Just go to the Business Side of Music website homepage and look for my book cover. Click on it, and a free digital copy of my book will be yours. I'm Larry Butler, and I approve of this message. Thanks.
You're listening to the Business Side of Music.
Back in the studio, Michael Sloan, CEO of Streaming Promotions here in Nashville, Tennessee. We don't happen to be in the same studio today, but we are in the same city, and that's just about as good as it's going to get. But with that being said, the independent artist. Now, anybody that listens to this podcast knows I'm a huge proponent of the indie artist and indie music. We always try and take time after each episode to play a song from an independent artist, showcase them. I think it's important, especially with, as you said, the platforms like Amazon, Spotify, Pandora, etc., that seems to be such an maybe easy isn't the word, but it's such an open door for the major artists and the major labels. And I'm going to back up even a little further. When I was at the labels, and I worked at 3 labels over about 15-year period, we never had a streaming promotions department because it didn't exist. We, in the very beginning, were dealing with things like Napster and Kazaa and Morpheus, and then iTunes came out, which was the saving grace. But even then, as you said, there was a bit of a filter in that the quality of the music still had to present itself. Now, and I think you said it, you can make armpit sounds or fart sounds or whatever and put it out there. And people, in some cases, they'll pay 99 cents to put it on their phone app. And it's a shame because these artists spend hundreds upon hundreds of hours and thousands of dollars to record maybe one song, hoping that someone will appreciate it. Spotify CEO Daniel Ek earlier this week said that the independent artist must create continuous engagement. And in other words, don't release an album every 2 or 3 years. Put something out there all the time to stay in the spotlight. Is that a smart move?
It's a complicated question. I think it comes down to, the artist and their art. And I don't think anyone can really say what the proper release schedule for an artist is, right? If you want to get straight to the crux of it. But as far as Spotify specifically, it's Daniel Ek's quote, the algorithms are built to consume music with more frequency. I mean, a lot of the research that we did at Streaming Promotions in the very early days of putting the company together is, how do we advise our clients on releasing music? And we studied two artists that were really hot at the time, one being Chainsmokers and the other being Drake. And Chainsmokers was releasing a single every 21 to 28 days. A lot of those were remixes or adding artists to things. And then Drake was releasing EPs, 3 to 5 songs every 3 months, like clockwork. We got into the artist insights and started to look at why was that happening. And what we saw was Drake specifically was releasing an EP every 3 months because he would spike his monthly listener number on Spotify, and then it would plateau for 3 weeks to a month. And then as soon as it would start to dip, he would release another EP, which would then create another spike. So his monthly listener number looked like spike, plateau, spike, plateau, spike. It just always went up. Chainsmokers was a different scenario. They were releasing music every 3 to 4 weeks, and it just looked like it was climbing a mountain. It just constantly went up because they were one, Spotify was growing rapidly at the time, but two, releasing music that frequently got you into larger audiences on Release Radar and Discover Weekly, got you into more playlists and larger genre playlists. So they were really working the system. If you want to play the game and grow audience, you need to release pretty frequently. If you're an artist that wants to release albums, it's your art. It's your pride. It might not reach as many people by doing so, but we try to advise our clients that even if you have an album and you've got 12 songs together, break it up into 3 or 4 song EPs and release it quarterly or every 3 or 4 months. That way you're giving the audience something new, and you can rebundle it at the end through your distributor and call it an album, and that's perfectly fine. But continuing to feed the beast is kind of what Daniel's speaking to there. And I don't love it because I grew up on albums and you got excited for that next release from your favorite artist, but there also weren't 40,000 tracks being released every day when I was a kid. So you kind of got to do the best you can in the environment you're given. So I agree, and still give the artist complete control of their artistic pursuit.
When it comes to the artist out there, and once again, we're kind of circling around that 40,000 number, how far out ahead should the artist be prepared to get out there? And you're saying something every quarter, but there is a certain amount of setup time to get the music in place. How does that work? If Bob, the singer, comes to Streaming Promotions, how much time should I plan on my calendar setting this all up to get everything into play to get that first rotation going?
We don't need much setup time at all. We need 7 to 10 days to get you ingested kind of into our system, get sort of an EPK for us to have together to reach out to curators with, kind of get all our arsenal together. For the artist, that setup can look like digital stunts and a lot of social media campaigns, trying to do things that is going to create some anticipation with the audience that's already there. I realize that by saying, every quarter, that's asking for an artist to be pretty prolific, and not everybody creates music that fast. I'm only speaking in best case scenarios, not necessarily, what an artist should or shouldn't be doing. But I just know that Spotify specifically is set up to feed the beast and continue to churn.
When we talk about numbers, and one of the things that I know that Tom, the co-producer of the show, we look at those algorithms. We look at that constant wave that's going up and down. And in our world, in the podcast world, it changes about 400 times a month for us. At least I think that's the accurate number at this point. So we can focus on one thing and go, okay, this is the direction we're going. But by the end of the month, it's something else. So we're honestly a lot of times flying by the seat of our pants. Is it like that for you, or do those numbers, do those algorithms, do they stay the same? Is it a little less choppy water for you to work in? Do you know what it's going to be like 30, 60, 90 days down the road?
There's never a good idea of what, of what the mathematical equation to build those. If I knew exactly what it was, I would make sure to push those levers every time. We've got a pretty good idea as to what's moving the needle. We know that if you're seeing an uptick in monthly listeners, you're going to hit a larger, I call it bucket, but a larger bucket of people through the algorithmic playlists than if you're on a downturn. So if you were at 20,000 monthly listeners and you've fallen down to 5,000 and you go to make a release, you're going to see less of an impact on those algorithmic playlists than if you were at 5,000 and grew to 20,000 and you're close to a peak when you create that next release. I think that also is how you get on the radar of that editorial team. So if you go through the Spotify artist portal and you send music to the editorial team, 2 weeks prior to release, and you're on an uptick and upswing in your monthly listener count, you're going to have a better likelihood of at least getting heard and cutting through the noise of, the 40,000 or whatever number that is being released that week.
And that's obviously what we talked about in the beginning. It is really getting yourself to a point to where that editorial review becomes a little kinder and gentler for you as an independent artist if you have the numbers to show it.
Well, sure. And you also know that you're going to get, if you're on the uptick, you don't necessarily have to rely on editorial. You're going to get some boost from the algorithms and just growing audience that way through, those algorithmic playlists are all individualized to the user. So it's based on their listening habits. So you're going to grow audience based on those individual accounts that maybe haven't heard of you before.
Let's say I'm an artist who really doesn't necessarily fit one genre. So maybe I'm alt rock or I'm blues or I'm country rock. Can you work that into different genres, different platforms at any given time to maybe help expand that audience? Or do you just focus on one at a given moment?
Now, we're pretty wide in the way that we go after curators. So it's not a genre thing for us. I think genre went out the window. If you're not worried about radio, right, genre doesn't really matter. We attack a lot of playlists that are mood driven or songs to get ready to in the morning or songs to go on, drive a back road to, or usually those playlists don't necessarily have a specific genre. There was a big playlist early days called Just Cry Sad Songs, which had over 250,000 followers. And it was just sad songs. It could be a sad country song or a sad jazz song. It just had to be sad. So we early days learned that it wasn't really so much genre. It was much more about the lyrics or the vibe or the mood of the music. And then we could work that as well.
Gotcha. We're going to take another break, get in another word for one of our sponsors. We're going to have a little more conversation with Michael Sloan, CEO of Streaming Promotions.
This is Jeremy Stevens with High Fidelity, coming live from Nashville, Tennessee. You're listening to The Business Side of Music with this crazy guy, Bob Bender, hosting this show.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Hi, this is Tom Sabella, the creator, founder, and co-producer of the Business Side of Music podcast. It's loyal listeners such as yourself that make our podcast successful. Take the time to sign up for our weekly newsletter. Not only does it contain information on upcoming podcast episodes, but also informative tidbits on the music industry and even bonus items that we give away. All you have to do is sign up at businesssideofmusic.com and we will send you Larry Butler's new singer-songwriter rulebook. That's it. All you have to do is go to businesssideofmusic.com, sign up, and we will send you Larry Butler's new book. Thanks to all our loyal listeners. We love you.
Hey, it's Chris SD from Sync Songwriter. Imagine what it would be like getting your music into the latest TV shows, movies, or ads. Your songs would not only get exposure in front of millions of viewers, you'd get paid to do it and gain a reputation as the songwriter that you are. I've been showing songwriters, composers, and artists how to get their music into TV and film for over 15 years. Collectively, they have generated hundreds of thousands of dollars from licensing their music. Their music has been on networks such as HBO, Bravo, ABC, NBC, Netflix, and more. In films or trailers such as Predator, Annihilation, Christmas Chronicles, Professor Mac, and many others. So many songwriters upload their music to websites hoping to get discovered. Unfortunately, this almost never happens with the millions of songs out there competing for attention. I show you how to get your music heard by the people who can actually make it happen for you. When you start getting your music licensed, you automatically develop a reputation in the industry. This lets you get syncs over and over again. If you'd like to discover how to connect with the right people in music licensing, just click the Sync Songwriter logo on the Business Side of Music webpage, and I'll see you there.
You're listening to the Business Side of Music.
Back in the studio, Michael Sloan, CEO, Streaming Promotions, here on this edition of the Business Side of Music, just in case you didn't know which podcast you were listening to. During the break, Michael and I were talking about bots and kind of that buying your way in and pay to play. I know that in radio promotions, I talked about it earlier, the fake lists, the wannabe lists, or maybe it's a legitimate list, but that and $5 gets you a cup of coffee at Starbucks. Buying bots, you said during the break, does really nothing more than stroke your ego. Why would anybody pay to play or have bots involved unless they just don't know what they're doing or what it's going to accomplish?
I think if you look back historically in the industry, there's a lot of, fake it till you make it. A lot of paid placements, whether that be in PR, buy your way into an industry rag, if you will, or buy your way onto a stage, or buy your way onto a concert tour. There's a lot of fake it till you make it. So unfortunately, people still think that's the case with Spotify. If I get to 1 million streams and I can show, the A&R guy at whatever label that I got 1 million streams, and then if I have 100 million Instagram followers, then I'm something. I think it's about authenticity. If it's not real, if they aren't real people, then you're setting yourself up that even if you get that deal that you're hoping from faking those numbers, when you release real music or you try to go tour against that music, nobody's going to be there. There's not a real audience there. So I've really tried with building streaming promotions to keep us authentic and keep it real people and make sure that we're not doing anything that looks funny. I mean, we don't pay for placements quite simply because the first time that a curator starts accepting money for a spot on their playlist, that playlist pretty quickly deteriorates and becomes a lot of garbage music because it's just to the highest bidder as opposed to there being any type of real genre or vibe or feel or mood. And, again, there's a lot of music released. So there's a lot of people who just pay just to have a place on a list that has 50,000 followers, and that might not be as effective as they think it is.
So let me back up for a moment. And when you talk about getting those numbers, hoping to impress an A&R person or a label head or whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish there, can they see through that?
They couldn't for a while. What we've been able to do, I'm sure that those people now have staffs that are able to do, which is dig into the insights on Spotify, determine where those streams are coming from. If it's Indonesia, and you're an artist that's based in Chicago, I've got to guess that unless you're releasing music that might work there, unless you're doing some K-pop or something of that nature, that's probably not real. It's probably a bot farm of some sort. There were some hot spots in the States that picked up for a while that were botting. There was a spot outside of Chicago. There was a spot in Houston. And so when you saw those as top markets, you start to kind of raise your eyebrow. And when things pop really quickly that don't really have a lot of rhyme or reason as to why, you can start to see through it. So yes, it's possible to spot it. I think for, maybe a year, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, there was some ways to kind of, obfuscate what you were really doing and fooling the label. But, they're not going to spend a boatload of money on promotion on something and get fooled too many times.
Well, and I think the other thing, too, is when you start looking at legitimate followers, whether it be on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, other platforms, and those don't correlate with what they're seeing on Spotify, I think would also be at least a caution flag there.
Well, yeah, you go back as far as MySpace, right? And the MySpace music player, and there were people that were building bots just to spin, and people were signing some of those people and realized very quickly, oh, there's nothing here. I've been fooled. So this isn't their first rodeo. Labels are pretty hip to the game of trying to really fake it and make it look like it's something it's not. Again, back to the A&R, I really wish that that it came down more to quality of music and quality of artist as opposed to, well, this thing has some numbers and I can do something with it. But at the same time, that's the game we play.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So the artist wants to hire streaming promotions. What's that process? What do they need to do? As you said, you get 250 submissions a month and you take 5 or 10 of those. How do they get your attention? What do they need to do?
I mean, the first step is just going through the submission form. If you are in association with a larger management company or a label and you'd like for them to reach out, obviously that's going to get my sales team's attention probably a little more than an independent artist. But every artist that comes through our submission portal, which is on the front page of our website, they come through, obviously just send a link to the music so we don't have to then request that. My entire promotion staff will listen to that. We'll see if there's an audience for it within our curation community. Somebody on the sales team will be in touch. And basically at that point, it's we work in 3-month campaigns, so everything's due up front because chasing down musicians for money is kind of like trying to get blood out of a turnip. So, we pay up front. We start the process at 7 to 10 days to get you ingested, send out weekly reports. There's a midpoint call with the entire team to make sure, expectations that were set are being met. And we run the thing for 3 months. Obviously, there's ebbs and flows of that. Some people say I'm going to release 12 tracks over the next year and want us to come on in kind of more in a monthly installment kind of situation for the entire year. And we're able to do that as well. But definitely the inroad is go through the submission portal, get us your information. Somebody will respond to you from the contact form and we'll go from there.
And what's the cost involved?
So our 3-month campaign is $2,000, and that is for the promotion team. That is for our reporting. We also get feedback, have a feedback tab. So we reach out to our entire community and rate the song 1 to 10 and give, 5 to 10 words of feedback, similar to what you do with kind of radio research in the radio promo world and you got to take that thing with a grain of salt because anything over a 6.5 is basically a number one hit. It's, curators are salty folks. We do what we can. We really try to be as honest and transparent. I've got 2 people that do nothing but customer service. I've got 3 people on the staff that do nothing but research, new lists and what's emerging. I got 5 people on the promotion staff. We really try to be as dedicated to that project as possible. And growth is going to be slow and steady usually because it's not I own 10 lists and I put your music on those lists. It's reaching out to these people, following up, trying to get that ad, seeing what that ad is doing and how it's factoring into the monthly listener total, the streams that are coming out of that playlist for that song, and we just keep grinding it. We hope to get an ad or so a week. It's not going to be 1,000 ads over the course of a campaign. It's just not really in the realm unless you're buying or botting or faking. So we've got a community of 2,000 to 3,000 people, probably 3,000 to 5,000 playlists at any given time. Anytime somebody says that they're accepting money, we put them on a do not contact list and just say that's not our game. You can play that game elsewhere, and those lists usually don't survive too long with any success.
Gotcha. I appreciate you being on the show. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for having me.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Sweet. Thanks so much.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound designed by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Fuson.
Hey, hey, motorized elation. Hey, hey. let's do it again. We'll light up a fire and just say when. Push the button, don't let her idle. Take a ride on your red motorcycle. Take a ride. Take a ride on your red motorcycle, yeah. On your red motorcycle, yeah. Take a ride on your red motorcycle. Take a ride on your red motorcycle. White motorcycle, black motorcycle, blue motorcycle, big bad motorcycle, yeah. Take a ride on your red motorcycle. Take a
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.